So, you guys ever help your parents out in the garden? Yeah? What kinds of things do you do in the garden? Mow the lawn. Okay. All right. Well, okay. All right. Well, do you guys help weed and you help pick things when the harvest is ready? You guys been out apple picking this fall? Go to the orchard and pick apples? No? And eat the apples? What kinds of things do you pick, Grace? Carrots. Okay. Carrots are good. What about beans? No? Raspberries? Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes when you're picking things in the garden, beans or carrots or tomatoes. You guys have tomatoes? Yeah. You don't like them. Okay. Oh, okay. You like onions? Okay. Uh-huh. Sometimes when you're picking things, do you sometimes miss some? Maybe especially green beans. Green beans are hard to see because they're green and the plant is green, right? Yeah. Tomatoes are pretty easy to see, but even tomatoes can sometimes hide so that you don't see them all, right? Or if you're picking apples, sometimes you get all the apples off the tree. Probably not. That's a lot of apples, isn't it? When I was little, I used to go pick green beans. My dad would send me to the garden to pick green beans, and I would pick the whole row. I would get a couple buckets of green beans, and then he would say, go back and do it again and make sure you find them all this time. And I would go and look and look and look and look, and I'd get another bucket, and then he would go, and he would find even more. No matter how hard I tried to find every green bean, I'd always miss some, and my dad could find them when I couldn't. Did you know that in ancient Israel, many years ago, does anyone know somebody who lived in ancient Israel? Do you think of somebody who lived back before the time of Jesus? What about somebody who slew a giant? Yeah. David. David's somebody who lived in ancient Israel. Back in the time of King David, in the time of ancient Israel, God told the people that they only had one chance to pick things from the garden or from their field. If they had grapes or if they had beans or strawberries, they had to go through the field and they'd pick everything they could find, but they could not go back through a second time. We're going to read Deuteronomy. We don't often read from the book of Deuteronomy, do we? Deuteronomy 24:19 to 21. When you reap your harvest in your field, and if you forget a sheaf of grain he's talking about there, you will not go back and get it. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, the widow, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hand. When you pick the olives from the olive tree, you shall not go over the branches again. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. And when you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not glean it again. It shall be for the stranger, the father, and the widower. So God told the people, when you pick things from your garden, you pick them once, and anything you miss, you leave it. Why did he do that? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. For the fatherless, that means an orphan, right? A kid who doesn't have parents. And the widower, or a widow, sorry, not a widower, that's the opposite. The widow is a woman whose husband died. So for the poor people who don't have their own gardens, don't have their own fields, have no way to get food for themselves, they could go to those fields that other people had picked, and they could find what was left and have food to eat. God did that because he cares about his people, doesn't he? He cares about all his people, even those who are very poor and can't buy food and can't grow their own food. God wanted to make sure to provide for them as well. God cared about his people back then, So he made that rule. He cares about his people now. He cares about you just as much as he cared about them. And just like he made sure that even the poor had food back then, he also makes sure that you have food and clothing and school. Yeah. God takes care of his people. Jesus talked about this in Luke 12:27-29. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And yet I say to you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If God clothes the grass, which today is the field and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? Do not seek what you should eat or what you should drink. Do not worry or have an anxious mind. So Jesus says we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to worry. God took care of his people way back in the time of David, making sure they had food, telling the rich people not to go over their field a second time. And he takes care of us today too, doesn't he? Everyone have something to eat today? Raise your hand if you have something to eat today. I think you all have something to eat, right? God has provided for you today, and he'll provide for you tomorrow. We're going to sing about how God provides for us in hymn 785. I think you guys know this hymn because you've been practicing it. Children of the Heavenly Father. You know that one?